of America pledging to support the initiative with $55 million. And key players at the ongoing 6th International Culture Summit in Edinburgh, Scotland, have identified skills, arts and creativity as strong motivators for sound education and human capacity building. The 34th session of the Nigerian-Cameroon Mixed Commission on Permanent Resolution of Boundary Dispute between the two countries has ended in Abuja, with key decisions taken towards resolving grey areas. The Mixed Commission says it will continue to work closely with the United Nations, European Union, International Court of Justice, as well as the demarcation and technical team to identify and recommend the implementation of the Trans-Border Infrastructure Project to enhance economic cooperation and integration of the two countries. The Mixed Commission notes the continued support of governments of Nigeria and Cameroon, as well as European Union, the United Kingdom and Canada, towards sustaining the livelihood and social cohesion of the border communities. The Nigerian Army has officially handed over 2 dismissed soldiers to the Yobe State Police Command for criminal prosecution over the alleged murder of a renowned Yobe cleric, Goni. A report from Jigawa State indicates that a bridge near Birnin Kudu along the old Kano-Maiduguri Federal Highway has collapsed as a result of heavy flooding, with rivers and the corridors overflowing their banks. A situation has forced motorists plying the routes from Kano and northeastern states to look for alternative routes to reach their destination. Meanwhile, officials of the Federal Ministry of Works have visited the collapsed bridge for immediate assessment, and the next line of action being the second bridge to collapse along the road due to the heavy and torrential rains being experienced this rainy season. A National Emergency Management Agency in NEMA has unveiled new strategic communications digital push that has the capacity for video and audio communications that can be used for monitoring and assessing disasters in field of operations. NEMA's Director of Search and Rescue, Air Commodore Edward Adedokun, says the agency can now communicate effectively with the frontline respondents and command centers. That's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. I'll be back with Kinsley and Kieran after this break. Good morning.
Well, you are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Next on the program is business news with Alika Okpanachi Aroa. But it seems we are beginning to experience some audio difficulties at the moment, and we hope that our engineers will be up to the task of bringing us back, and we have to take a newspaper review as our next segment.
All right, Kieran, we have 2 newspapers in the meantime with us. We'll start off by taking a look at the window page of the Punch newspaper, and above the name flag of the Punch newspaper, federal government rakes in 1.09 trillion naira from indirect taxes. That's on page 27. Unpaid salaries, Plateau, Benue, and Ondo workers and others grown. Unpaid salaries, Plateau, Benue, Ondo, and other workers grown. Contributory pension assets hit 14.36 trillion naira. ASU strike enters 196th day. Union decides today. You have details on that on page 18. An earpiece beside the nameplate, aviation sector's GDP crashes by 61% amid crisis. The list story, of course, is on politics. Says PDP NWC divided over IU, and chairman's fate uncertain. Very busy number of riders there. I have no problem being loyal to Wike and Makinde. That's according to the deputy national chairman of the PDP. Party in dilemma over successor if IU resigns. Spokesman says NWC not divided. Atiku others receive Shekarau back to PDP today. Obasanjo touts national agenda. Buhari mourns Gombe Emir. You can see the photographs there on the front page of the paper. His body being borne after the funeral prayers for the Emir. Lassa fever cases now 894. Ondo and Edo lead. 30,000 died of air pollution in Lagos, and the story is attributed to LASEPA, with details on page 9. Borno crowd excites Kwankwanso, ex-governor hopeful of victory. Kirian.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Al Jazeera newspaper. This story says no preferred candidate yet, according to Obasanjo. There are two riders to that headline. Meets Abdul Salami, says ex-head of state is special in a way. Earlier in talks with Obi and Tinubu. All that on page 24 of Al Jazeera newspaper. CBN, healthcare intervention reduced medical tourism. That's Emefiele, the CBN governor. The story is on page 27 of Al Jazeera. Nigeria now capable of producing standard COVID vaccines, says NAFDAC. Details on page 11. Akwa Ibom, police reiterate ban on masquerades. That's on page 2. NBA vows punishment for killers of magistrates in Kebbi. Details of that is on page 2. Now, no plans to create Emirate Council in Yewa, says the Plateau government. The story is also on page 2. And on page 28 of Al Jazeera, we have NICOM plan to acquire 5 billion naira office TIAS management apart. NICOM plan to acquire 5 billion naira office TIAS management apart. That's on page 28. At the bottom of Al Jazeera, a federal government committed to ending border dispute with Cameroon. That's on page 22. DSS releases Kanu's mother, Mama Biafra, from detention. It's on page 10. Adopt Jonathan's method to end strike, ASU tells Buhari. Details on page 11. Like we have a number of headlines that we could
very interesting headlines. Let me start with this rather alarming story. I hope just that the numbers are right. The story is in greater detail on page 9 of the Punch, and it says that 30,000 died of air pollution in Lagos, and that's according to the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, and that happened in year 2021, which was last year alone. If 30,000 people were to die of air pollution in a particular location, that would call for the declaration of an emergency of sorts. Kirian, I mean, to say that 30,000 persons died, it's obviously alarming, and this is according to a report put out by a government agency. Now, what is being done? There are a number of measures that they have adopted, but there are sources of pollution, air pollution in Lagos, are fairly obvious, and you find them in the use of generators with poor combustion. You also find them in vehicles that are not roadworthy, that are plying the congested highways and streets and alleyways in Lagos. First
of all, I'd like to question the statistics, the data, released on this, because, well, I'm not sure that the writer made clear the investigation carried out before arriving at that very.
No. It's not a reporter's conjecture. The report is quoting a document published by the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, and the document is themed that it says that, look, air pollution is responsible, that's the document now, for over 30,000 premature deaths in Lagos in 2021. So it's attributing it to the agency.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes, and well, I'm also interested in knowing whether that figure is correct, because 30,000 is not just a little number. I mean, if pollution can take 30,000 people in Lagos, what about other ailments? You know, I mean, you know, that is bedeviling the city as well. So the figure is alarming, as we pointed out. And when you talk about vehicles, you know, releasing carbon dioxide,
Carbon monoxide.
Carbon monoxide rather, I begin to think of the responsibility of the road safety corps in the first place. There are vehicles that are not worthy to apply Nigerian roads, especially in congested cities like Lagos. And if you go to Lagos, you see many vehicles, you know, smoking along, and nobody cares about that. Nobody bothers them. And now look at the reports we're talking about. You know, pollution killing 30,000. If that's correct, in 1 year.
In one year alone, and then you also have to ask yourself how many other residents of the city, or even visitors who have all kinds of respiratory tract infections or ailments. And by the way, one should also point out that in the past, this was about 20 years ago, and it lingered for a while, with the formation of LASMA, there was compulsory tests required on vehicles for the vehicles to be certified roadworthy, and this was MOT test. Barney Redden was commissioner for public transportation in Lagos. But of course, you know, Lagosians and indeed Nigerians would resist anything. It's like the typical smog test that your vehicle undergoes if you are in the advanced world. If your vehicle doesn't satisfy that smog test, it cannot be on the road, because either whether the effluents or the carbon monoxide or the noxious discharge from your vehicle will poison the environment and poison every other person else. So this is a wake-up call. It is not just sufficient that this report has been released. I think that the government and indeed all others should start. It is not just in Lagos, but elsewhere in the country.
Parakot, you know, Kano, all those high-density areas.
Kaduna
as well. Now, look at this story on Nigeria having the capacity now to produce a standard COVID vaccine. That's a healthy development. I've always believed in Nigeria's capacity in getting things done, especially in science-related things. And this publication by NAFDAC clearly indicates that some of us who believe in homegrown technology, you know, we have been right all this while. So if all facilities and all materials required to do this are available, Nigerians have the know-how, technical know-how, you know, and scientific knowledge, you know, to be able to, you know, make vaccines even more, you know, stronger, you know, than the ones that we're receiving from other parts of the world, because we're going to use certain materials that are from our own environment.
Good point. But I think the bigger story, in my opinion, would be for us to have the Nigerian-made vaccine on the table.
That's what NAFDAC is saying. We will not have the capacity to do that. So
just have it, roll it off the production line.
The one that rolled off, now they said, look, it will be due for testing sometime in November or thereabouts. So we hope that by then we'll be able to know the efficacy of what they have in store.
I share your optimism, Kirian, that we have the potential, and of course we do know that the coronavirus has spawned a lot of initiatives by the government. BioNTech, it's involved in this, and of course we have a number of experts. In the past, we used to produce vaccines, but unfortunately, as we rolled back in terms of our developmental advancement, some of those things also folded up like an accordion that has stopped playing.
Let's talk on this story, Kingsley. NICOM plan to acquire 5 billion naira of. You see, when you talk about wastages in government, you know, these are 5 billion naira worth of an office to house what? Well, I mean, why would we'll be talking about $5 billion or 5 billion naira worth of an industrial complex? When you want to spend that kind of money, it should be spent on something that's productive, not something like just an office to house NICOM. And the management, perhaps what has happened is that some members of management have refused to do that, saying, look, this is humongous, you know, just for an office.
Well, again, these are some of the issues that we get to confront in the public space. NICOM stands for the Insurance Commission, is the regulatory authority of the insurance agency. Now, the NICOM has been in existence for some years. why is it looking for a new office space? And what search has it made in the first instance to acquire a new office space? If you recall, some time ago when we were having conversations around what to do with assets that have been forfeited, finally, by the courts in terms of persons who have been convicted of corruption cases, the question then was, if some of their structures are suitable for office use, then you convert them to office use, provided that they are not in residential areas or they are not in prohibited areas for office accommodation. Is it that NICOM has made all its search and representation to whoever, because you have a number of government entities, including the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, the EFCC, and I think there was some committee.
I think Vaughan too. Is using a complex, that was forfeited.
Vaughan is moved out of Radio House in Area 10 and gone down to Wuse 2. Yeah. So what is it that NICOM is looking for that it cannot immediately find? And if you say acquire this for 5 billion, is it a fresh construction project, or there's an existing project, an existing building that you say we want to buy, and how competitive is the pricing?
Okay, now lastly, on this segment, let's talk about this issue of Cameroon-Nigerian border. Now, the meeting just ended yesterday, in Abuja with respect to addressing the issue. Are we talking about the Bakassi Peninsula, or are we talking about other areas, other border areas between Nigeria and Cameroon that we've had all along? Of course, it has been perennial, if you ask me. I mean, it's been a while now, and we're still on it.
Well, this is part of the enforcement of the ICJ judgment on the Nigerian-Cameroon border dispute. The Bakassi Peninsula is only one aspect of it, because the cartographic information required had to do with the northern fringe, straight down through the middle belt, right down to the sea. Then came the various protocols for the enforcement of the decision of the ICJ. And this is part of what has still arisen from that. Of course, we are a national public broadcaster, and but some of the Cameroon Nigeria issue, that's to say the cession of part of Nigeria's border to Cameroon was a great national loss. We have to cope with that.
Exactly, something has to be done about that. Well, on this note, that we conclude the newspaper review on Good Morning Nigeria today. Stay with us as you take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be looking at reviving the Ajaokuta Steel Complex. Don't go away.
Dreamt of being in the spotlight. That's why I give him Bornvita for everyday vitality that gives him the strength to pursue his dreams.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we indicated at the beginning of the program, our subject matter for conversation this morning is on efforts to revive Ajaokuta Steel Complex. Some parts of it are working, but we do know that the complex has not been completed. We have a number of guests who are with us this morning. Here in the studios, we'd like to introduce Issa Ozi Salami. Issa Ozi Salami is the Ohio Tenyete, I hope I got that right, Ohio Tenyete of Ebira Land, and also a member of the Governing Council of HYPADEC, that's the Hydroelectric Power Producing Areas Development Commission. Ebira Land, of course, is where Ajaokuta is located. Issa Ozi Salami, it's our pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much indeed.
And joining us from our Kaduna Network Center is Professor Mohammed Haruna, Executive Vice Chairman, National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, NASENI. Professor Haruna, glad to have you this morning.
Good morning.
And via Zoom from Ajaokuta is engineer Sumaila Abdul Akaba, the sole administrator Ajaokuta State Company. We thank you for waking up with us this morning.
Good morning, sir.
All right, Engineer Sumaila, let's begin this conversation with you. I'm sure that there are a number of Nigerians who, if they were to take a look at our screen this morning and say reviving Ajaokuta Steel Complex, they would say, look, what is the meaning of this? We've been hearing this story for so many decades now, and nothing appears to be moving. We might as well begin by indicating how critical Ajaokuta Steel Complex is to Nigeria's economy and what is, as we say, on ground at the moment.
Okay, good morning, viewers. Ajaokuta Steel is supposed to serve as the bedrock of our industrialization. This was the dream of our forefathers, but after 4 decades, we haven't been able to do much about that. The present administration of President Buhari has done a lot. He has personally gone to Russia, Sochi, to engage the original builders. We had issues with COVID, and now we have Russia and Ukraine war, etc. But where we are now is that the federal government, through the Federal Executive Council, has recently approved private sector participation from either local or international company to deliver Ajaokuta Steel. The Ministry of Mines and Steel Development is working with the ICRC details of these developments.
Thank you. We are going to return to you in the course of this program because you are a key person as far as this conversation is concerned, being the current sole administrator of that complex. As a matter of fact, my colleague came from an angle that I'm going to stay with, and that has to do with the stories we've been hearing over the years. Exactly what you just told us, I can tell you that as a journalist, I've had this over the years, for 20 years or more, that efforts are being made by an administration. And after said and done, Ajaokuta is still lying fallow and comatose, because whatever is existing in Ajaokuta at the moment is over 100 of the potentialities of that complex. I have been there. I've done a documentary on Ajaokuta Steel Complex. I've gone round the entire 800 hectares of land and seen what majestic, complex that we have as a nation that has been abandoned over the years. So at this point, I'd like to bring in the Ohio Territory of Abuja land, and the Ajaokuta complex is situated in your locality. Give us an idea of what may have happened over the years that we are seeing where we are after the conceptualization and the establishment of Ajaokuta Steel Complex in 1979.
Well, I think is the Ajaokuta story, as you yourself have indirectly admitted, is most unfortunate. And most unfortunate because this is something that we ought to put on the front burner, and we should have completed it. In fact, the Shagari regime completed it up to 95% before they left. That the remaining 5% has taken us this long is a bit embarrassing to the nation. And the Ajaokuta Steel Company is the bedrock of industrialization, because you need steel if you must have technology. And then if your economy needs to move fast, you need steel. First of all, it will conserve foreign exchange, because you have to import steel for what you don't. I mean, like the railway, all the railway that we are importing from China now, were things that the Ajaokuta Steel Company is designed to produce. So it is it's unfortunate, but when you look at the development plans, you'll find that things are correctly stated there, the sequence and what have you. But in implementation, things have always gone wrong. The development plan provided that Ajaokuta will be completed, and then the railway reconstruction program will follow suit, so that the inputs from Ajaokuta will come from I mean, the input for the railway expansion or modernization will come from Ajaokuta, including the rolling stock and so on. But that has not been the case. Instead, we have to be importing. And this is the most unfortunate part, because every time we cry that our economy is down, but we don't bother to find out why is our economy not as promising as we expected. And these are some of the problems that our priorities are misplaced. And unless we return to doing the right things first, we will always be in cycles. Today, the greatest problem we have in this country is unemployment. And that unemployment has affected our insecurity scare and what have you.
What, in your opinion, was responsible for the inability of successive administrations to tackle whatever challenge that we have at that complex? We have had to go to Indians, we have to go to Russia, back and forth, we've been to America, and stuff, and nothing has worked. You have been in there, and we need to know from you, what was the key problem? Don't talk about the conspiracy and what international conspiracy and what have you. Why has it become so difficult for us to, echo meaning from this project?
The problem is that the political will has been lacking for a long time. And each time we stumble into something promising, like the present regime has tried to revive Ajaokuta, some other things will come in and just from nowhere to destabilize the plan. For instance, when the president went to Russia and signed that agreement, MOU, and there was a series of steps to be taken, all of a sudden COVID-19 came in at a time, I believe, when the technical experts were to come and assess the current situation of the plant, and they could not come. And these are not things that you can attribute to any deliberate sabotage, but it is natural, because nobody expected COVID. When the agreement was being signed, nobody knew that it was, but the impact of COVID has caused this current setback. In fact, the current regime, I must give them that credit, set up a high-powered committee, and the sole administrator can confirm, headed by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, to ensure completion of Ajaokuta. And they were working hard, holding a very series of meetings when suddenly COVID came in and, caused and the current setback. But previously, as I said, the nation aimed very well because it was well positioned both in the Vision 2020 program and even in the development plan. But every time some reasons will come and people will jump, we'll skip the completion of Ajaokuta and move to the next stage and so on, because it is more convenient and perhaps it is much easier. And we cannot rule out selfishness of the responsible officials. And I am aware, for instance, that there was a minister who did not even go to Ajaokuta to see the place when she became a minister, until there was an accident. And it was only when she went, the director in the ministry who was in charge of Ajaokuta was traveling to the east, and he had an accident at Ajaokuta, and he had to be hospitalized in the steel clinic. Mm-hmm. When he got recovered, got some consciousness because he was unconscious, he was asking where he was, and they told him that he was in Ajaokuta. And he said, is the place still alive? And he then requested that when he was coming back, he would like to spend that day to confirm, because there was a file on his table for it to be scrapped and so on. So he was surprised. But by the time he got there, he said the minister must come and see the place. And the permanent secretary must come and see the place. And it was when the minister came that the salaries that had been withheld for months, he ordered that it should be paid, because she then realized. And I was so surprised because at that time we were holding a meeting of the Kogi Elders Forum when we got this report. And General Saliu Ibrahim, late General Saliu Ibrahim, was the chairman of the forum. And some of us were very, very upset that minister will be put in charge of this thing, and then she did not even know the expanse, because that is the most important in the steel ministry. And yet she had no idea until she had to go there because of this accident. So you can see some of the things about the tardiness of officials that I think also contributed to it. And of course, the structural adjustment program, which completely displaced the previous priorities of nation building, also contributed. But you see, our problem is that when we leave one stage to the other, we don't try to make a connection. And if we had done that, there are certain good things in the old import substitution that we could have accommodated in the structural adjustment program, but we just abandoned what we were doing before and went into the structural adjustment. And it is this link, this
disconnect.
Yes, that I think is responsible for much of our problems, not only in Ajaokuta, but in so many other things.
All right, thank you very much, Isa Ozisalami, for the points that you have raised. As we have indicated, the story of Ajaokuta is sometimes, in a sense, a story of a national embarrassment. And one will be surprised, Kirian, if doctoral dissertations have not been written on different aspects of why Ajaokuta remains the way it is, against the backdrop of the National Development Plan that was conceived to bring it to fruition. I had earlier asked the current sole administrator of the company what the state of the complex is at the moment, so that we know what we are dealing with. Because the received knowledge is that the Shehu Shagari administration had accelerated the completion of that project, but there was just some percentage left, probably single-digit percentage left for completion. Is the complex still at 95% completion, or what is it that we as a people will now have to deal with to ensure that it is completed and it delivers on its promise?
As of today, the plant is about 95.4% completed. When I took over the leadership of Ajaokuta State, the first thing you want to do when you want to manage any system is understand what you want to manage. So carry out an internal audit by the staff and members of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. For over a period of 4 months, we went from one plant to the other to determine what was installed, what was never installed, and what has gone bad. As of June 2018, we put the readiness to about 95.4%. Basically, what we're doing now in operational level is to ensure that these plans are maintained at intervals so that they're actually available, as soon as we want the whole plant to be operational. Ajaokuta was never completed, especially the primary sites. And we've had a series of meetings, a lot of progress being made in that regard. The present administration is committed, and we actually have a very committed workforce too, that every day we run 3x4 shift to ensure that at a point in time we have a particular staff on duty. It is worthy to note that Ajaokuta actually is built below water level. By implication, 2/3 of the plant is actually underground. So there's a need for there are some water pumps that run perpetually to ensure that this plant does not sink. It's a formidable plant. It's still very viable. It's one of the best plants you can find around anywhere in the world. The hope is there. This will actually provide necessary ingredients to revitalize our economy, provide employment. We need about 10,000 engineers to start in the first phase. That will give us about 1.3 million of liquid steel. And that can give us on the downstream over 500,000 indirect staff. So we have all these opportunities that Ajaokuta waiting. But I can assure that one of the problems I've seen in the past, apart from the political will, is that when we wanted to concession, we didn't follow due diligence. That is being done about 3 months ago. The Federal Executive Council gave an approval for Ajaokuta to go into private sector participation with either a local or international company that has the capability to deliver both financially and technically. The Ministry of Mines and Steel is presently working with the ICRC to fashion that. But I can assure you that if we do due diligence with the strategy we want to adopt this time around, Ajaokuta will eventually come into operation.
Okay, we are looking forward to that. Many Nigerians are as well. Let's see how that happens. Let's bring in Professor Mohammed Sani Haruna, the Executive Vice Chairman of the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure. Prof, you were the pioneer managing director of Power Equipment Manufacturing Development Institute, PMAD, which is located somewhere in Kogi State. And you have had a cost to engage with the Ajaokuta Steel Complex and in the area of trying to engage in the manufacturing for PMAD at that time. You have also traveled so wild and have cause to interact with operators of agencies similar to Naseni and even the steel complex that we are talking about. Now, let's share your view on what the situation is at the moment at that complex and what can be done, to improve that. Because what the MD just told us, he said we have achieved 95.4%. But in 1994, we achieved 98% in 1994. So between 1994 and now, we're talking about 94.5%. So it will be confusing to many Nigerians who have looked forward to Ajaokuta as the driver of the nation's industrialization.
Thank you very much, Kirian. Let me start from your last comment. Yes, the sole administrator is right. It was 98% in 1994, but his assessment is now that it is 94% because so many plants installed are supposed to be operated. They must have deteriorated, and certain things will have come in to reduce because certain things done before, you have to repeat it when you need to go forward. However, let me say that it is very important for us not to neglect the historical perspective. It is not only Ajaokuta Steel that we have also a larger steel complex. We are supposed to have the two complexes operating at the same time. The two came about because Ajaokuta is a Nigerian project with Russian, but the European Union, probably due to the politics in the then bipolar world, advised that the Russian model was not going to work. They brought a different technology to and provided funds for the German and Australian to establish a larger steel complex in Delta State. The two technologies were different. Of course, that of Alaja was is more modern, and it required faster approach. And Alaja was completed and even commenced commercial production. However, the raw materials that was used and the plant itself was configured and designed to use raw material from Guinea, from Liberia, not suitable for our own type of iron ore that we have. Of course, it was alleged that within 3 years, the source of these raw materials got depleted. And then Alaja, after operating for about 3 years, got grounded. Now, Ajaokuta, also, we had a series of problems. But there are 3 key problems, apart from the political conspiracy and the playing field in which Nigeria was then under the 2 different worlds, the Russian and the West. One is the materials to be used in Ajaokuta. Itafe was identified, other steel deposits in Nigeria were assessed in different parts of the country. Now, Itape was said to have the best. However, the content of iron is said to be only about 35%. And there was an agreement to bring in a high-grade iron ore from Guinea that is assessed to have 70%. In fact, Guinea has among the best iron deposit in the world, of course now being controlled by an Australian company. Now, it was said that we'll import from Guinea, blend with what we have in order to make it feasible to operate Ajaokuta steel. Now, after that agreement, it was never implemented. Ajaokuta commenced operation, successfully commissioned 2 rolling mills, the light section mill and the medium section mill, producing different iron. I was there, I witnessed operation. I was a technician or technologist in maintaining equipment during that operation. However, that shouldn't have been. What will have been more useful to the country was even the flat sheet mill, which will have been making it possible for us to fabricate and manufacture automotive parts and so many other components. We gave priority to these iron rod mills for bridges and building. Fine, but we are not producing billets that is the raw material for the mills, so they were imported. The billet mills were never completed, that we are supposed to use the Itape iron deposit. But then, even as of today, the Itape iron mills is not commercially, the Itape iron deposit is not commercially viable until certain things are done. But thank God there are technologies, not only in the West, even today locally, to improve or to enrich this deposit for production. It was not, and it has not been tested commercially, but those technologies are available. Now, concession came in as the managing director or the sole administrator said. The concession was wrongly done. There was bidding process, all right, but the winners of the process were not given due to certain interests and influence. That was under the regime of President Obasanjo, of which we know what happened. The Indian company that were given the concession, they were not the winner, started cutting away the facilities there, and of course, due to their poor performance and mischief, the government of President Eradua of blessed memory terminated that contract, leading to certain litigations about it. Now, the way to go about it, sorry, even if you didn't ask for the solution, is that the integrated plant must be broken into components. The steel mills that are successful, they can be operated through private partnership, private-public partnership, with billet imported now from Guinea, from Liberia, from Algeria. There was an attempt in the past to bring in raw materials from other parts of the world, including Algeria, including Brazil, to ensure Alaja can move on, because it is faster to start, it is faster to operate using what is called direct reduction. But for the Ajaokuta, there are certain further studies to be done. Even if it is 100% today, you have challenges of the technology originally conceived. You have the problem of the raw material that must be enriched for it to be commercially stable. Yes, there is need to have private sector participation, but all over the world, there is no country that has handed over its steel sector operation 100% to private sector, because government must, as a policy, drive and provide incentives and create an enabling environment for the private sector to see some subsidies, to be interested in doing that business, because generally it is a very tedious, highly capital intensive. Our recommendation is that government of Nigeria should not wash out its hand off it, but must have stake not more than 40%, and of course not less than 20%. It must continue to be interested in that, because the challenges we are having is that, I remember, as Kirian has said, when we conceive manufacturing transformer in Nigeria as Nigerian version, through our feasibility studies, our challenges is that the laminated iron ore that will be our iron component of the machine, where are we going to get it from? When we conduct a study, it is better we produce locally. How can we get that from Ajaokuta? What do we need to do? That has compelled us to look at various options and come to the conclusion that a revival of Ajaokuta steel is the solution, but not as an integrated whole. We can commence operation this month by operating the 2 mills that were completed, successfully operated, lacking only raw material. And I assure you, I saw some things recently that there is a company commissioned to do some audit. I assure you, we don't need any spending point to audit anything. The sole administrator has said it, they know exactly what is on the ground. Other experts know exactly what is on the ground. We don't need a foreign person to come and audit the plant and say what is on the ground. We have professionals. We have trained thousands of workers for Ajaokuta steel, most of whom have retired without practicing what they learned in Russia. I have come across some that were employed in South Africa in their steel industries, in Brazil in steel industries. I have even known some that are now in the business of steel manufacturing on their own in other countries where the enabling environment, where the incentives are available, and therefore they found it commercially viable. The constitution of the National Steel Council is definitely a step in the right direction. This is the first time it is done in 40 years that is supposed to be in position. My advice to the Steel Council is that they should work only with Nigerian professionals. We have the professional, we have the competencies. And National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, we are compelled, we are forced to invent our own rotary furnace to be melting iron and steel, sometimes scrapped, in order to produce the workpiece and component we use in producing our machines. But we are not supposed to have business doing that. If the steel industry are working, we are only to hand over our design to them. This is an important sector. Until it is developed, we cannot have machine tools or working. If we don't have machine tools, it means we will never industrialize. We will continue to import any piece we need from outside. Automotive development cannot be successful until the steel. The solution is concession component of the steel complex, both Ajaokuta and Alaja. Let's commence operation. I assure you that if approved for us, our enabling act, National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, have mandate to venture into manufacturing complexes, manufacturing concern in partnership or as a solely we are interested. and we know who to contact across the globe to ensure that these two mills can be function and they will be commercially viable. While doing this, the process...
Professor Haruna, I want to pause you in the meantime, and my next question is also going to you, but I will preface that question by repeating what I said a while ago, namely that there are some Nigerians who, when they hear you discussing or about to discuss Ajaokuta steel complex, they say, oh, not that subject matter again. The kind of revelations that you have made this morning would, of course, plus of what the other guests have also said, tend to reinforce that lack of interest or indifference in the Ajaokuta steel complex. But we do know that Ajaokuta, and indeed steel, is the bedrock of our industrialization. And some of the economic challenges that we face in our country today can be directly traced to the absence of that backbone for our industrialization process. Kirian, we have seen in 6 months the Ukraine-Russia war, the price of iron rods in the market, those prices have skyrocketed.
Exactly.
Ukraine iron rods used to be the premium in the market.
Exactly.
I don't know how much they haven't bought iron rods now, but I mean, once you hear those figures, you just run away. And as those figures continue to climb, it means that the cost of delivering industrial projects will also continue to increase. But when we keep talking about the absence of political will, there's something that Professor Haruna said a while ago, and this is also a point of curiosity, I believe, for a number of Nigerians who are interested in this subject matter. We always say that, oh, Ajaokuta was 95% or whatever percentage near completion. There are Nigerian expats who are in country. We have Nigerians who are in diaspora. These Nigerians have knowledge and experience in steel issues or in industrial design and completion. What is it that can be done to harness their talents and, as you said, bring them in for this project? Who should Nigeria, that's to say the Nigerian government, be listening to on this subject? Could it be some other international financial institution that says, oh, no, you are going to do X, Y, Z, or the so-called consultants who are all over the place with their briefcases? When we come back from this short break, Professor Haruna, you will take that question. All right, you're welcome back from the short break, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I had loaded my question before we went on that break. Professor Haruna, the question was for you. To whom should the Nigerian authorities be listening to in getting it done? And why has it been, as I said, that with just 5% or thereabout left, even if it is 10%, Nigerian experts, knowledge, expertise, experience worldwide, in country and in diaspora, can't we assemble ourselves and say, look, if this is the bedrock of our industrialization effort, let's get it done?
Thank you very much. The way forward, the solution is, of course, to answer your question, it's not from foreign consultants, it's not from IMF, World Bank. By the way, IMF and World Bank have prescribed and recommended that they have always been doing that we should abandon the project that is not commercially viable. But there is no country that is leading in manufacturing in the world today, whether they have deposit of iron ore or not in their land, that is not manufacturing steel of some sort. So it's a must. We thank God the Nigerian government have never agreed to implement that in totality. But I will say there are certain implementation behind the scene. As Isa Ismaila said, there has been a lackadaisical attitude in the ministry and a lot of policy somersault in the Ministry of Iron and Steel, Ministry of Petroleum, Power and Steel, In all this nomenclature, steel is always the last one, solid mineral and steel. Steel is never Ministry of Steel and Power, but and steel, always the last one. So the solution, the government has started now by constituting this council. The council should know that it is only the Nigerian professionals. And where are they? The Nigerian professionals, those trained in Russia, those trained by Russia, trained in South Africa, trained in Brazil, who are supposed to be employees of Ajaokuta Steel and Alaja Steel at different times. Some even trained in Germany and Australia. Some of them, as I said, have even died. Some have reached their retirement age and left without putting what they learned into practice. A lot of them, we know where they are. In fact, there is a union when their pension and gratuities were not paid. We are forced to have certain network where they know where some of them lives. They are Nigerian professionals who got this training and got employment elsewhere in the world. There are some that venture into their own business. Now, Nigerian Society of Engineers, as you have heard from the sole administrator, conducted studies and using professionals that is their field of specialization. The Nigerian Academy of Engineering, in which I am also a council member, conducted a comprehensive study, evaluated, audited the plant, and consider what needs to be done for the successful takeoff, I can say, and operation of Ajaokuta Steel. These studies and recommendations were presented to government appropriately about 2-3 years ago. I urge the National Steel Council, now that government has constituted them, which is a good thing to have happened in this industry, to consider these studies. There are some professional, again, that is their field of specialization. I know there is Professor Isa Garba was an engineer, managed the mining cadastral. He was a director in the Ministry of Power and Steel. Then there is engineer Goni Sheikh. All these people have gone across the world, have practiced theoretical and practical aspects of this steel industry. They are still available, but they are never consulted. They are not even members of this council. They are professionals available that can provide a way forward. But as I said, what needs to be done now? Let's start operating the mills that are completed and tested with imported billet from neighboring African countries, from Guinea, as I say, from Liberia, from Algeria, and then get these mills operational. While we are in the process of locally, there is test, there is experiment done, there are prototype, there are results obtained on how to enrich our own iron ore to make it commercially viable for steel production. There are certain components, phosphorus, for example, is detrimental, but then all the other ingredients are available along our axis. Lapia OB have cooking oil, dolomite, obajana, lokoja. I mean, all that we need as raw materials and ingredients for successful steel operation, enrichment, or a cleaning is available. So what we need to do, start operating what is available and is commercially viable. I'm telling you, if approved for us, we as National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure can invest also our fund to see to the operation of this. While we also is necessary to commence construction, which was never constructed by Russian, of the flat sheet mills, because it is even more needed in the manufacturing industry than the iron rods. The iron rods for bridges, for building. These are needed for other machine productions, for automobile, for a lot of things. aircraft component, steel channels, all these things need to be done. Then, while this thing is going on, Nigerian experts can show how we can complete. I assure you that I was in Azerbaijan recently. The actual people that have the brain and control for the Ajaokuta steel are no longer in the current Russia. They are in a different part of the country. We don't need to wait to work with the Russians. We can go it alone. Areas that we don't know, we know how to figure them out. Thank you.
All right, Prof.
Figure them out.
Thank you indeed, Prof, for, in fact, raising not just points, but very, very critical, points for that matter. And I'm more concerned about the fact that Nigerians have the professionals, because I personally, witnessed Nigerians, in action in China in 2019, when Naseni sent 60 engineers and scientists to Huawei Group and the China Great Wall Industries Incorporation to learn how to manufacture transformer, for instance. And these 60 engineers, they were so good in all units of the production in terms of the design, building, assembly, testing, tank construction. And these are all facets of transformer production. And the Chinese, instructors said, look, that they were too fast. They didn't believe that the Nigerians will have the capacity to meet up with the demand of learning how to produce transformer. They were amazed at what happened. So I want to buy into the fact that we don't need any Russian, we don't need anybody, else apart from Nigerians who already have the technical knowledge, to get these things done.
And Kyria, just to add to what you said and what Professor Haruna said, one of the names that he mentioned says Engineer Goni Sheikh. He retired as a federal permanent secretary. And at some point in his career, he was permanent secretary in the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. And I think that it should be of concern that some of those who have deep insights into this field do not appear to be members of the Steel Council. We believe that the government can still take a few steps back and be sure that the real experts are also accommodated.
Exactly. And I want to bring in Engineer Sumaila Abdul Akaba here, the sole administrator of Ajaokuta Steel Complex. Professor Haruna did say that there are certain 2 plants that are completed that could start working at the moment, and they are commercially viable. Are you looking into that? There are other areas that could be functional, so that Ajaokuta will not be totally flat. Something could be happening there, as Professor Haruna said. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yes, I quite agree with most of the submission of Prof. We've actually broken down most of the shops in Ajaokuta Steel Company, and a lot of proposals presently on the table. We have a lime plant, and we know the problem getting lime into this country. That want to operationalize. We have the power plant. We also have the oxygen plant. Yes, the strategy now, part of the strategy, apart from the holistic restoration of Ajaokuta Steel, is to actually run the components of Ajaokuta Steel so that we can sweat our assets, and can earn foreign exchange for the country, the needed foreign exchange, and provide employment for our people. I want to make a point about the iron ore in Itakwe, the viability, which Prof mentioned. We have a beneficiation plant in Itakwe, and basically what the beneficiation plant is doing to the iron ore is to take it to over 60% purity, which will be used for Ajaokuta Steel. The Ajaokuta Steel plant is a blast furnace technology, and on our critical discussion with the original builders about a year ago, there are modifications that is now available to ensure that we'll be able to use our local coal. So a lot of solutions are at hand, and it's good today that I mentioned that very recently the Federal Executive Council approved a transaction advisor for the restoration of Ajaokuta Steel plant. Basically, their work is to carry out detailed financial technical and legal work to ensure that we can bring back this plant. Operational Ajaokuta steel plant advantages for this country cannot be emphasized. We have a lot of social problems, we have kidnapping, we have very high level of unemployment. Ajaokuta will give us a lot of foreign exchange. Ajaokuta will take us from the third world to the first world. I actually don't have an opportunity. We don't have any other chance. We don't have a choice other than to make the steel plant functional.
Engineer Sumaila, it's interesting that we these days make a song and dance of earning foreign exchange because, of course, there is forex pressure. So we earn the foreign exchange, and then we also spend the foreign exchange importing things. So the foreign exchange goes down. Then we again earn more foreign exchange, and then we import more things, and it goes down. What is it that the transaction advisor is supposed to be doing? You'd say legal and all kinds of things. And there are a number of studies that have been conducted previously. If you listen to Professor Haruna, he did say that, look, it's time for us to look inwards. And indeed, this will be in sync with the executive order requiring in-country deployment of both personnel and assets for whatever we seek to do.
Well, there are process and procedure that's required when you want to carry out any project. I believe and I agree with Professor that we have the relevant competence to actually carry out most of the work required in Ajaokuta. And even the ones we don't have the technical expertise, we can always beckon on international community or wherever those technical expertise exist. The transaction advisor had already been approved by the federal government is to carry out detailed financial business case for Ajaokuta Steel and also look into all legal issues that we've been involved in before we can bring in the foreign or local investors. It's actually open. The investment is open to both local and international investors, especially because of the fund that we required to carry out this assignment. Just as been mentioned by Prof earlier, we also have the second strategy. We want to run individual plans that are available. Even the individual plan will require some work to be done on them before they can become operational. We have detailed plan for that, and we have submitted to the minister.
Okay, thank you. You've also had Professor Haruna saying that the Nigerian Society of Engineers, which I'm sure you remember, carried out research and, of course, some documentation in that complex, as well as the Nigerian Academy of Engineering. And this is the highest echelon of engineering, professionals in Nigeria, and they have done some good job that, of course, you could also adopt as an engineer as well. Now, let's come back here to Isa Uzi Salami. You've listened to the other two speakers. They mentioned a few number of things that you may consider very crucial to this conversation. Everything is tilting towards the possibility of bringing back Ajaokuta Steel Complex. And I've had so much of the issue of contacting foreigners and all of that. If there are areas, yes, that we could need consultants from overseas, fine. But this issue of we relying 90% or more on foreigners is shocking, because from what Professor Harun has said, and from a little experience, we have seen Nigerian engineers, scientists work. You can't beat them anywhere across the globe, except areas they do not know about at all. But if they are trained in those areas, you can't just beat Nigerians anyway globally. And for me, Ajaokuta...
There are Nigerians, Kirian, sorry I'm leaving you. There are Nigerians who are employed by NASA.
Exactly, and that's the highest level of science and engineering globally. And even, of course, the largest steel complex in the world, that's the ArcelorMittal, headquartered in Luxembourg, has a Nigerian staff there. I had to find that out as of yesterday. It has a Nigerian staff. That's the largest steel complex in the world, in Luxembourg, right? So you are not just a stakeholder, because you is located in your domain. What, in your opinion, could be the next step to take, considering what Professor Haruna has said and the response from the sole administrator of Ajaokuta complex?
I think the problem is lack of coordination of efforts. And as indicated, the Ministry of Steel Development is moving in a particular direction. I mean, they have just appointed a transaction advisor, and I was happy that you mentioned that what is the content of the technical transaction advisor's role, and it has not been clearly specified from the response I've had. And then the Naseni has promised that they could offer a lot of things. These things are just not coordinated. And until they are coordinated, we cannot move. And I want to call on the federal, when Ajaokuta was started, they had what they called the Steel Council, which was domiciled in the presidency. I still remember later Alhaji Negedu was the secretary of the Steel Council when Ajaokuta started. It was put there so that there will be quick response to policy initiatives and what have you. Now later they went and created a Ministry of Steel Development. Now it is steel and minerals and so on, so that the attention on the steel sector keeps depleting as soon with new creations and what have you. In fact, the steel sector, because of the volume, the sheer volume of finance that it requires, should be very, very close to the presidency. It should be very, very close to the presidency. It should be so important that the president should be able to give instruction and get feedback as to what is happening. But the channel of communication, the bureaucracy, sometimes delays some of these decisions. And in technology, you cannot afford some of these costly delays. And then in a country like ours, where unfortunately there's no consequence for failure, either at the level of the minister or the permanent secretary and so on, everything looks that diffused. So I think the way forward is for the federal government, and I think the vice chairman of Naseni made it very clear that in all over the world, you don't find a steel sector that is privatized.
Fully privatized.
Which is the direction our officials seems to be thinking. And it is too premature. We should bring this steel company up to a certain level where it will be attractive for private people to come in. No private person would like to sink his money in something that is, so big, and the prospects are not bright. So I think the federal government should bring the steel company to a point where it will be attractive for investors to come in. But right now, I don't think we've reached that stage. I think they are putting the cart again before the horse.
All right. Thank you very much, Isa Ozi Salami. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, there will be on the home stretch for the conversation segment.
It's your
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. All our three guests are still with us. Sole Administrator of Ajaokuta Steel Company is with us via Zoom from Ajaokuta. Professor Haruna of Naseni still with us in Kaduna, and Isa Salami is here with us in the Abuja studios. I want to go back to Professor Haruna. Professor Haruna, it's interesting. I think that one of our three guests, that's including your good self, mentioned the point about probably lack of coordination in some of these areas. And the references that we've made to Guinea this morning just drew my mind back to a point made by one of the former vice chancellor of Ahmadu Bello University. I think he's into metallurgy and solid minerals. I listened to a presentation he once made, and he was telling us on that occasion how Guinea is the leading country in terms of mining in West Africa. And now we can understand where the investors are. And Kieran, you remember the other day we were talking about what happened in Angola. Angola just discovered the largest diamond in 300 years. The largest diamond in 300 years. And we couldn't possibly just be going back and forth and talking about road shows and so on and so forth. Where there is real work going on, you have the investors there, and then these persons are able to get on with the job and give you results. But more crucially, in terms of orientation, Professor Haruna, have we conceived of, say, Ajaokuta Steel Complex as part of our critical national infrastructure?
To agree with Isa Salami, I remember when I had an interaction last week during the retreat of the National Steel Council, I do inform them that the first setback we had in the steel sector was the dissolution of the National Steel Development Authority, and then its function was transferred to ministry. This ministry has transformed so many times, maybe 5, 6 times. Ministry of Power, Steel Development, Ministry of Power, Steel, Ministry of Mineral and Steel. Steel is always the last in the priority order. But then, the steel sector is a manufacturing process. It cannot be successfully carried out under civil service bureaucracy. The functions of how to develop Ajaokuta Steel, our steel function, should be the function of this National Steel Council. The ministry should wash its hand off that. It will never be successful under ministry bureaucracy. There is no country whose steel development is under a ministry. And ministry in Nigeria, for that matter, no serious business of manufacturing and commercial activity should be the affairs of the ministry. Now, also, the professor you talk about is one of the 2 professionals I mentioned. Professor Garba was Vice Chancellor in Abuja. But before then, he was the head of the mining cadastre. He was a director in the ministry when it was Ministry of Mines and Steel. It's the same person whom you talk about mentioning. So the truth coordination will be proper under the National Steel Council. The National Steel Council need to be populated with some professionals who have the institutional memory, historical and engineering and technical background on the matters of steel development. This must be done. And as I said, it has to be both a PPP operation. And as collaborated by the sole administrator, there are certain plans, there are certain workshops that are good to go after 1 or 2 amendments within a short possible period, if properly funded. Now, this political will now that the president has muscled and constituted this council against all odds should be backed and supported by appropriate funding. Yes, as I said, with private sector, you can be sure that what you are investing, you'll definitely get a dividend. And I repeat, we are willing to be an investor player. Why we are doing well now today is because we are separated and screened or shielded from ministry bureaucracies. And this is how any other agency that is a government corporation to generate revenue or to bring the manufacturing and technology development should be. And that is what it is all over the world.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Prof. And I would also like to congratulate the agency, your agency rather, because of the current development, where we are now going to have the first transformer manufacturing plant in Nigeria, having, of course, reached agreement with the China Great Wall Industries Incorporation as part of arrangement, for Nigeria to begin to have its own transformer produced here in Nigeria. We want to appreciate your efforts and that of the agency for getting that far, because, of course, in the next 24 months, Nigeria will see aggressive production of transformer as against importation of transformers that are not friendly with our environment. All right, Dr. Sumaila Abdul Akaba, what is the relationship between your establishment and the National Steel Council? Is there any form of synergy between Ajaokuta Steel Complex and the National Steel Council? And if yes, what are the critical areas that you are focusing with respect to ensuring continuity in the sustenance of Ajaokuta Steel Complex?
Okay, the National Steel Council is to formulate policy that will aid steel development in Nigeria, the general steel development in Nigeria. So we happily have a relationship, and they are like a model system to all steel operation in Nigeria. So the relationship is a very new committee. We had our first meeting. I'm a member of that committee, and we're providing all relevant information that will be required to make the necessary strategic decision.
Thank you, Engineer Sumaila. I want to come back to Ozi Salami. I raised the question to Professor Haruna that probably that aspect of my question wasn't answered. And namely, assuming it is not already the case, and I'm not aware of this, is it possible for us to conceptualize Ajaokuta Steel Complex? I'm not talking about the steel industry. The industry can be in different locations, but the heart of our steel industry is Ajaokuta itself. Is it possible to conceive of it as a critical national infrastructure, which means that it would magnet all other things that are required and be sure that it remains a priority and it achieves its mandate?
I think you have hit the nail on the head. And what is lacking when we talk of will, the issue of attention, persistent attention, is very, very important. And that also goes with the justification for resource allocation. If the national budget is being done and Ajaokuta is just seen as one of the other departments, and last year we spent so much there, so let's put so much there this year. That kind of approach to budgeting, which is what we have been practicing in this country year in, year out, cannot assist Ajaokuta. The president needs to come out and prioritize the completion of Ajaokuta, because its completion is going to bring so many advantages. For instance, even the issue of unemployment alone that it can tackle is a sufficient reason for such a move. So it is very, very important that something is done beyond what we are seeing now. For instance, the conception of the committee headed by Boss Mustafa to see to the completion of Ajaokuta, I thought was a move in the right direction.
All right, sir. Thank you. Thank you indeed. I think we have been able to touch many aspects of this topic with respect to reviving or seeing the revival of Ajaokuta Steel Complex. But a lot needs to be done from our conversation this morning. And at this point, we'd like to appreciate all our guests for being part of our show this morning. Isa Ozi Salami, Ohio Tayete of Ebira Land, an honorable member, Governing Council, Hydroelectric Power Producing Areas Development Commission. Thank you. We know you have others like the former board member of NTA. Thank you for coming here this morning. And of course, from Kaduna, we had Professor Mohammed Sani Haruna, Executive Vice Chairman, National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure and Study. So I would also like to thank you for sharing your thoughts and your time with us all the way from Kaduna this morning. Thank you indeed. And we'd also like to thank the sole administrator of Ajaokuta State Complex. I wish that you will be there when Ajaokuta will come back to life. That's Engineer Sumaila Abdul Akaba, sole administrator, Ajaokuta State Complex. Thank you for being part of our show today. All right, now let's take some sports tidbits.
All right, so that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you for tuning in. Join us again tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kirian Umayo. Thank you for watching and see you again tomorrow.
Into Europe, across Asia, inside the Middle East.